Hello and welcome to today's painting stream. My name is Leah and I teach acrylic painting on this YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing some sunset studies. I have a bunch of reference photos for you to peruse there. I'm going to be painting in my journal today, and I'm going to start with this horizontal layout. It is easier for me to paint on this side of the journal if it's horizontal, so I'm going to start with that bottom reference image there, and then I'll do some of the vertical columns on the next page. So today I'm going to be painting in acrylic paint, and I'm going to kind of do some strategic underpaintings. I always start with a burnt sienna underpainting for my typical landscape paintings, but I think today that's going to vary a little bit. However, I am going to stick with the typical warm colors go on first, sculpt clouds, and then build up layers so that we keep that vibrancy of the paper alive. So I am starting with that long horizon line of that first painting, and I'm gonna use a ruler for that because that would be kind of tricky to keep that straight for that long. So I do have a ruler handy here, and I'm not going to be taping anything. This is the one line that I insist having a ruler for. Everything else is pretty much go with the flow territory. So I'm going to be using a flat brush, I think, because the scale of this journal is a little bit smaller than what I'm typically painting. This is a 6x8 mixed media journal, so it takes wet media fairly well. I wouldn't recommend doing this in just any old sketchbook, because sketchbooks that are for dry media, they wiggle and ripple so much, even more than this one, and I do have it clipped down. So the sun point I'm gonna put right here, and this is just cadmium yellow light. That's going to be the ocean line right there. And now I'm going to pick up a little bit of cadmium medium red. Get a nice light orange going. And from the outside of the sunspot towards the sun, I'm gonna pull that orange. All the sunsets that I pulled today are very different from each other. Kind of like a challenge, trying to exercise the skills. This is a little bit of a darker orange. So I'm building up that layer, and I'm starting from that outside and pulling in so that it lightens up as it goes towards our sunspot. And that same orange is reflected in that ocean. I added a little bit of white to kind of make it a little bit more pink, because I want some pink on the horizon line. That, and I don't really want to see that pencil horizon line, so I'll be building up some color there. I usually do a painting demonstration on Wednesday, but I was waffling on what to paint for days. And I like to do something kind of seasonal, and nothing was very appealing, so it's important to keep your studying going. So even if you don't feel like painting any subject in particular, do something loose and not very committal. So that is what painting in the journal is for. Because if something here goes astray or doesn't get complete, it's totally fine. I'm going to brush that pink up into the sky. On the corner of the composition here. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. But there's going to be land over here. I like a rosy horizon line though, so. Using the skinny edge of my brush all the way to the edge there. This needs another coat. I'm just going to let that dry and come back to it in a bit. Now there's some pretty flamey colored clouds as the layer that's closest to the sun. Like really intense. Really intense red. I don't know if I buy that. But that's okay. This is just a study session, so I'm going to go ahead and try to replicate that. Some wispies here. The paper is buckling just a little bit for me on the edge, so that's going to affect my brush strokes, but I'm not really bothered by it. Not enough to like tape it or clip it down. If we were talking about a figure that wasn't so organic or that had to be right on, then I would remedy that for sure. Now there is some more. So I'm going to put more red clouds up here than there actually is. I'm going to be covering up a lot of this red with the magenta purple that I see out there. And I'm making these clouds up here a little bit more stylish and less literal. All right, now I'm going to mix that magenta, that rosy magenta. So I have cadmium red medium. On my brush, I'm going to drag over some quinacridone magenta. And that is almost the purple, not quite, but it's a good start. I'm going to add a little bit of cerulean blue onto the corner. And since cerulean blue is more of a warm blue, that's going to mute that color just a little bit as well. I'm thinking that's about right. I'm going to start in the corner. I am going to be covering up most of this upper cloud red, but the red that I'm going to leave there is going to be on the sun side. Let's also put some little drifters on their ownsies. Okay, so some of this color is also in the water. Right up against that horizon line. Oh, I'm trying so hard to be steady there. That was a trick. I just rinsed off my brush with some water, wiped off on a paper towel, and now I'm blending the bottom edge to soften up that line. And now I'm going to add more purple coming away on the water. Now I'm going to use that same purple to represent the distant mountain that's on the right. Now I am going to create the purple of the sand. It's a little bit lighter. I want to start a little bit warmer and a little bit lighter out there in the distance, and then as it comes forward towards the viewer, we're going to try to get darker. So I'm going to darken that up by adding a little bit of quinacridone magenta and some ultramarine blue. And then I'm going to start from the corner. And it's still a little wet, so it's going to blend. It's also pretty transparent, so that's going to help us out. Now that darkest, there is a darkest dark, and it's coming into the foreground. Not into the foreground, it's on the right, but it's in front of those distant mountains. There's just another layer of mountains that comes towards the viewer a bit. It's just darker. But I'm gonna keep that kind of painterly and loose. There is just a touch of blue in the ocean. Probably more like a light mauve color. But I have more cerulean blue in my mixture. And I'm just going to keep these brush strokes really light and watery and horizontal. I'm using the thin side of this flat brush. And those lines get smaller, smaller, smaller as they disappear into the distance. Good. I think this line is too hard of a line to come out that far, and I see in the reference images it does get a lot warmer as it's coming away from the sun, which makes sense to me. So I'm just going to really quickly rinse out my brush all the way and then pick up a nice warm color. There is a decent amount of water in my paintbrush right now, and I am going to add a little bit more water as even and drag from the side now to about here, and then rinse it off completely, dry it off, and then whoop, blend out that edge. That gives us a nice beautiful gradient coming from the outside and working in. Now, while I still have my paintbrush pretty clean, well, take it back, it wasn't I'm gonna give it a good old rinse anyway, because I'm about to pick up some white and I want it to be clean and radiant. So that is all the way rinsed out. Got a little dollop of titanium white, and I'm going to place the sun in the middle of that radiant cadmium yellow light. A little bleb right on there, as thick as I can manage it without it being like a weird shape. I'm going to pull a little bit of the titanium white out and a little bit up. And then drag some wisps of it away from that sunspot. But those are going to be pretty darn light. Paint is light. And transparent by the time you're dragging it away there. I will probably go do another little spot of white when that is all the way dry. Okay, so now I'm ready to do the cools in the sky. So that is going to be mostly titanium white with just a little bit of cerulean blue. Less than that even. It's amazing how obvious it is that there is blue on your brush when something is this warm and this intense. So what I'm going to do is, using brush strokes that are similar to the cloud shapes, I'm going to paint in the areas that I've planned out for blue, and then also drag it over the top of the edges of these clouds. I have a very light touch, but pretty darn thick paint. I'm just going to make sure that all those areas of white are covered. And of course that yellow up there didn't belong there. Now, as you get away from your sun direction, you're going to want to add more blue. And for me, that would be about now, just a little bit. And then the higher you go up in the sky, just progressively more blue, especially as you're coming out and away from where that sun is originating from. Wow, that is electric. I'm gonna put a little bit of that blue with some water in my brush into the ocean reflection, because I feel like that would be about right. About here. Just gonna overlap the cerulean blue that I put down there. You will want to wait for your blue to dry and then kind of just sit back and look at it for a bit and ask yourself if you want to add a little bit more wispies or some more little sky holes to your existing clouds. It really is magical to do the negative painting. And of course, you make sure you can rotate your brush. Rotate your brush to make different shapes. Make sure to do that so you don't end up with the same brush strokes kind of all over the place, because the eye will pick up on that pattern. There we go. Couple more little shapes. Of course, you can always go back with the dark purple or the red. Doesn't work so much with the yellow to bring out some more little shapes onto the blue that you just put down. And I think that does it for that reference. That is intense. That is very intense. Sunset. You know what though? Wait, hold on. Just another little coat of titanium white on that sun origination spot. There we go. Now we're calling it. Next one we're gonna do is one of these verticals. Which one though? Let's do that purpley one in the middle. And I'm just gonna clip this one down. And then we'll do the reflection one last. So this purple sky is going to have a nice pink underpainting. I see there's a really vague reflection in some sort of water. I don't know if that's a lake or a river or something like that, but the sun origin point is off of the image. I'm going to mix a pink with cadmium red and titanium white, but this is a little too warm. I'm going to add just a touch of quinacridone magenta to cool that pink down. And then a little bit more titanium white. Got some really pretty mountain shapes on this image. It's more important to get that gradient that originates from the sun setting. So I'm going to focus on that. So that's our light pink. I'm going to add a little bit of some dusky purple to that pink. And from the away side, I'm going to put that down. Got a good amount of water in my brush. And this is fairly transparent. I'm gonna need to do a little bit of work on getting this to be a nice gradient. And I'm gonna do that with layers. Got a little bit more of that dusky purple and a more intense color. And I'm gonna just keep on working on the sky gradient. And anything I feel like is a real problem, we will just cover it up with a cloud. That is a proven strategy. I'm going to be working my way from this purple to a more cerulean blue. I said cerulean blue, I meant ultramarine. But it's not quite pure ultramarine, it still has a lot of the purple in it. I don't want to go as dark as that reference. I'm going to wait for that blue to dry, and I'm going to go back to the pink. And I'm going to really pick where my sun is originating from, so I'm going to go here specifically. And now I'm going to darken that pink. And blend away from that sunspot. And then a little bit darker and do the same thing. Alright, now I think that blue is pretty well dry. I'm gonna go back up there on that edge, start on the edge, and then blend back towards the purple. I am varying the direction of my brush quite a bit to get some cross hatching. Okay, now I need that to all dry. In the meantime, I'm gonna mix some dark purple. And that's gonna be our mountains and our dark clouds. I have ultramarine blue and quinacridone magenta on here. That's giving us a incredibly rich and dark purple. And let's do a little mountain line. Okay, now that color is going to come into the foreground a little bit. Maybe I should add that little tiny reflection. Why not? Why not? Let's see, it kind of... I might even make it more prominent if it's worth adding. It's probably worth adding in a bigger way than it exists there. Now, if I would have planned on this in the beginning, what I would have done is pulled that color down here first. Absolutely. That would be the thing to do. Alas. Sometimes you decide to do these things not in the most optimal order. Trying to make sure there isn't like a hard line where the base of the mountain comes into this river valley, because that would definitely not be a straight line. Now I want this here to be something like this mauve. The nice about not having too many colors on your palette is you can pretty much get to something you've used previously pretty easily. It's a lot easier to memorize what your colors make. Gonna add a little bit more cerulean blue as I come away and down with that river reflection. And I might make a little pink gradient on that side there. Okay, now I've overlapped the shoreline a tremendous amount. And no, that's not cute. So I'm just going to mix that dark purple again and crisp up that bank line. And there we go. Now some clouds using that same purple. I'm running out of it already, so I'm just going to easily mix more. And I'm feeling like it should be a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to drag a little bit of titanium white over. And maybe I'll grab a little bit from this little mauve spot on my palette. And you know, I'm not so sure about adding the flat brush right here. I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll just use this one flat brush for this streaming session, just to exercise how many different shapes we can make with this brush. Which is good to know. It's good to force creativity with limitations like that. To really learn your materials. You're not always going to have exactly what you feel like you need. I like that shape, that's nice. I have a very small amount of paint on my brush right now, and I am very lightly scraping it on. Whoops, I changed angles, and that is too dark. That little one I just put down. Too dark, too, I don't know, hard on the edges. So I just wiped off my paintbrush and I rinsed it off with water. Then I went back to blend the edges, and alas, there was too much water on the brush. So now it's like this big watery streak. So I'm going to rinse and then do a better job of drying. And then come back and try to blend just the edges. Yep, and then wipe. And then blend. And blend and blend and blend. And okay, that's fine. Better. As this dries, it might be a little different than when you put it on. Just go back and adjust. I'm going to add a little bit of pink to this purple, a little bit of white. No, not that much. And I'm going to add this color a little bit more towards the side of the cloud that would be facing that setting sun, just to give these clouds a little bit more dimension. And it's not going to be anywhere on those upper stratosphere clouds there. And see how that chunky, very painterly style gradient on the background is not bothersome anymore. There's so many layers of brush strokes and cross hatching that it's just part of it. It takes the pressure off of making a smooth gradient. Making a smooth gradient for the sky can be very challenging and often kind of unrealistic depending on how big you're painting. I just let it go. I let the smooth gradient go. I'd rather there be lots of expressive brush strokes in there. Okay, that is sunset number 2. Let's do sunset number 3. I think we're gonna go with that one with the, what is that? It's a sunset over a grassy valley with, it looks like a runoff creek or something like that, a very kind of still creek. I'm not gonna push that down quite yet. It's got a little bit of damp paint. So this one I'm going to draw out a little bit of horizon line for myself. And it's mostly to keep track of things. This one has a little bit of composition to it as well. This ruler's not having a good time of staying in this spot. There we go. That is all I need. Just that right there. And so then there's going to be 2 sets of mountains. We'll just make this one go down like that. Next one I'm just going to not line at all. And then sun is going to be dead center. I want the creek or runoff or whatever it is to go left, then come back right, and then get bigger into the foreground like that. I think that's a more interesting shape. It's okay to change things to make them more interesting. I don't think anybody was in the spot to tell us no. And then I'm also going to change the... I'm going to change the clouds a little bit. Seems like they're kind of going more this way. I'm going to bring them down more this way, but I'm not even going to line it. They're just going to do what comes. So I'm going to start with yellow. And this sunset has a little bit more of a classic color profile, I want to call it. Starting with cadmium yellow light, so I want that brush to be pretty well rinsed out. little bit of titanium white on my brush. The rest is going to be cadmium yellow light, and starting from our sunspot and brushing away. And I'm also going to make sure to touch down on our little reflection pretty much during the whole process of painting the sky. I'm just going to make sure to represent that color down below as well. Alright, that's it for the yellow. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of orange. And my palette is becoming quite chaotic. So I have titanium white, cadmium yellow light, and then cadmium red medium. And I'm going to be dragging from the outside. Oh my god, the chaos. That clip really hated it there. I'm adding more water to my brush, and I'm kind of trying to make a smooth transition from the yellow to the orange. And if you're not happy or you go overboard with the orange, you can always come back with the yellow, but make sure that everything you just put down is dry when you do that. Now I'm going to add a little bit of pink, mostly to that horizon, right where the sunset meets the mountain. And there's some clouds that are that color pink that kind of go off the side that are pretty cool looking. So I'm just going to brush them in now. Kind of with a wispy smoothness. Now adding a little bit of yellow to my pink, I'm going to sketch out where these clouds are going to be. So since this is coming in a zigzag, I kind of want to do the opposite on top. I think that would be kind of fun. So it would be going out and then back and then away. Okay, that's the gist of it. Okay, I'm remembering to put that color down here as well in the water. I'm okay with overlapping quite a great deal onto the shoreline. No big deal there. All of that's going to be so dark. It's not going to matter. It'll cover up just fine. It's more important that you get those nice horizontal water impressionistic lines down there. Okay, so now I'm looking, and I'm going to warm up the edge of those cloud shapes by putting more yellow into that pink mixture and just wispily touching the edges of these clouds on the sun side. You see how effective that is. It just warms them right up. Now I'm grabbing a little bit more cadmium red, and on the away side of the clouds, I'm going to place that and brush it back towards that yellow edge that we just created. We're creating a lot of variation of these colors, and it's going to look really nice when we do the negative painting. Just remembering to put that more warm color down in that reflection. Breaking it up a little bit. Okay, now there's going to be the purple of that sky. I think I'm going to make this a little bit mauvier of a color than is in the reference. The reference has like a really dark ultramarine purple. But I think I will warm that up and lighten that up a bit. Now that I have that on the away side of the cloud, I am just going to have fun with this. Rotate my brush a lot to get some varying shapes. And then as I come down closer to the sunspot, I'm just going to add a little bit more cadmium red medium to that mixture, because I want it to be a little bit warmer and a little bit lighter as we get closer to the sun. Now I'm going to mix a much lighter version. It looks like there's some atmosphere coming off the distant mountains. And that's going to come into this pink color. Now I'm really going to, I'm going to grab another flat brush to blend the edges. I just grabbed some water really quickly. And that'll give us a nice smooth blend. Same color from the other side, just some little clouds on that horizon line. And then blend again. I'd rather go back and add another layer and wait for it to dry than to have some weird chunky brush stroke right in our focal point. That would make me sad. Okay. Now adding the purple into the water. Small, sharp brush strokes down here. Great, now it's time to mix some blue. Titanium white, cerulean blue. A nice light color. And I'm gonna pull it from the outsides in towards our sun with a very, very light touch. Super light touch, and I'm going to try to radiate out about the same distance from our sun origin point all the way around. Now I'm going to mix in more blue as I come up and away, and I'm going to try to cut away interesting shapes as I progress up my skyscape. Gonna need to squeeze myself some more white here. Because I'm gonna want this sky area to be pretty opaque, especially in the upper third. So I don't want to skimp on paint there. That's not the place to get to do that. Especially when you want to make these interesting cutouts with the negative painting. Because sometimes I'm going to wisp onto the existing cloud shapes and sometimes not. Okay, once you get that blue right where you want it, you can do this next step, which is quite nice, and you might want to wait for that to dry for the most part. And you can pick up a different size brush for this. I might do that. We haven't used very many other brushes. Right now we're sitting at one other flat brush just for blending. And then for one split second we used this round. So I'm going to pick up the round brush again. It's feeling really underutilized. We'll see, I forgot to add the blue into the reflection. Funny. Here goes the sunspot. We're going to put it right in the middle of the yellow. And I'm not quite going to make it completely round. I don't like that look. I would rather it be obscured just a touch by either some haze or cloud or something like that. So I'm going to bring that white glow up a bit in some cloud, wispy cloud type shapes. And then I'm also going to do some just wispy clouds that they're going to overlap the warm and the cool tones. So, and I'm also going to fix a little bit of this wonky blend with that little cloud shape. Pro tip for sure. You can highlight your first layer of clouds with these wispy white cirrus clouds. I think gives it a nice dimension. Especially right here where you can see that warm gradient shine through the edge of the cerulean blue. Loving that. That looks great. Okay. I'm gonna put that aside. I'm gonna add that sky blue into that water reflection while I am thinking about it before something happens. Okay, wonderful. Let's add those distant mountains. I'm going to stick with this smaller flat brush for the distant mountains. It's going to be easier to control. And I am going to make a dark purple, quinacridone magenta, and ultramarine blue, about 50-50. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of burnt sienna. A little bit more ultramarine, and that'll darken it down even more. So I'm gonna come from the outside of the mountains, and then I'm gonna back off when it comes up to the sunspot. I'm gonna back off a little bit. I'm gonna leave some space because I actually want the mountain to warm up a little bit right where the sun is. So I'm gonna wipe off the brush, not rinse it out, but just wipe it off and just add some cadmium red medium. And then paint the rest of that horizon line right up against the sun. And I'm going to blend it back into that color that I added for the rest of the mountain. Hopefully this works out how I think it's going to. Blend, blend, blend. All right, very good. Now I'm going to sculpt the edge of that little river. I'm going to try to vary the edges. Maybe there's some little parts sticking out here and there. And I'm going to let the bristles flare out, so I think that adds some interest. Especially on that edge, a little bit of that dry brush flare. Looks kind of nice. I've got that edge pretty well sculpted, but I am noticing a lot of transparency. That's okay, no big deal. There was no underpainting on that part. So I'm not surprised that I'm going to have to double that up a bit. I'm going to go ahead and lay the rest of that paint down rather quickly. You'll notice that I remix paint colors a lot. And I am not really worried about it being identical. I'm not using very many paints, so it is pretty easy to remix things, especially if you're doing it in the same area of your palette. It's gonna integrate pretty well, but if it's not nailing it and I feel like it's noticeable, I will just drag that color over the other areas of the painting where it makes sense. And then I feel like it integrates pretty well and adds some nice color variation. I'm going to let this side of the shoreline be a little transparent in a couple places on purpose. I think it looks nice. And I do like that horizon line. That is nice, warm, glowy explosion of light back there. And you can see where the mountain is more heavy and cerulean blue. Very nice. I find that one quite enjoyable. It's loose, it's expressive, it's got really dramatic color. It's not as choppy in the clouds as the reference photo, but I don't know. I don't know if it needs to be. There's also a little bit more, maybe not. Maybe a little bit more gradient in the clouds. And when you're using transparent colors, like, for example, the yellow, the red, the magenta, and the ultramarine blue that I have here are they're pretty transparent. So you can have your brush pretty rinsed out and then put some clean water on there. And then pick up just a little bit of, let's say, cadmium red medium. And just drag a little bit of that over this magenta. And it really brightens it up. This would be a glaze. Creates more dimension, more color variation, because you're seeing everything from the original magenta to the warmest point that I put on there with the red. And I can do that a little bit more down here. And if you create a hard edge on accident, just wipe that paintbrush off and just go back and forth on the edge to blend into the area that has already dried, hopefully. Because if it's not dry, you're gonna pick it up and blend it and make a mess. Make sure if you're gonna do any kind of crazy experimentation like that to assure yourself that the area has pretty well set on there. Okay, great. Let's see, do we have time for the last sunset? I think we do have time for the last sunset. This one, I got a little bit of a wet edge on that creek. Gently over. This next one's so fast. 4 sunsets in one stream. That's kind of wild. I think the water level that I have in my rinse well can handle this last one. This one's going to be yellow. It's mostly water reflection. So this is where the sun is. This is the cool yellow cloud that's above it, and then we'll give it a little bit of a hint of another cloud that follows that same shape. That, was that a chevron? Blend that out a bit. And then the water is going to be right here. And then we're going to put that yellow down into the ocean. Down, 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 all the way down. Radiating out from that yellow and white is going to be a good amount of orange. I'm gonna start with the orange and I'll build up to the red because that red is intense and that kind of scares me a little bit. Use as much water here as you need to get the brush control that you want. Because I don't really want any dry brushing in this part. I'm gonna go up and over that little sunspot. We can go back with the yellow too, a bit. Okay, that's the general shape that I want out of that orange. Now I'm gonna layer some red up. I'm not gonna overlap all of the orange. I'm just gonna inset that red. There is not a crazy amount of paint on my brush either. Although I am not dry brushing anything. Not on purpose. gonna leave that little wispy coming out. I think that looks nice. It's okay to let stuff happen. You know, you don't have to plan every single thing out. Plan your focal point. Base your composition on what you want the person to look at. And then you can let other things happen. As long as they support your visual journey, then you're probably good to go. Okay, I'm going to bring that red down in the water's reflection. Tiny, tiny, tiny little horizontal lines going away. And then as you come down into the foreground, make those brush strokes a little bit bigger. And then a lot bigger. Oh man, this painting right now is super loud. That's okay, the purple is coming. It's a mauve purple. I think, yes, that would be the thing to do. Add the mauve and then brighten up with the cadmium red if we need to. So I grabbed some quinacridone magenta and I just added it to kind of like this purple mixing zone that has happened. I'm going to adjust it towards cerulean blue, which cerulean blue, by the way, has leans more towards yellow. So if you add it to the quinacridone, it mutes it down a little bit, less intense. Added some white, and that value is it's about right. I'd rather go a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to add some cadmium red to warm it up a bit without increasing the saturation too much. And I think that's about right. But this paintbrush, now that I've mixed with it, is really, really loaded up. So I'm going to start with the darkest area of the ocean, put that down. And just pull in to the middle area and lift my brush up as I'm getting towards that sunspot, and hopefully that will taper that line a bit. Same method in the water. Keep the brush strokes really thin and small in the background, and as you move up, increase the thickness. Now as this purple color moves into the foreground, it gets darker, darker, darker. But that's freaking me out. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to do it yet. So I'm just going to continue this color. All the way into the foreground, and then what I'm gonna do is adjust it if need be. First, I need to add it into the sky to kind of balance this thing out, because right now it's looking pretty wacky. But I didn't choose easy sunsets. I'm trying to learn stuff here. Pretty loaded up with water. I'm dragging that color into the sky. From the outside, I'm pulling in. I've got a hard edge in some places, so I'm just going to grab another paintbrush and try to smooth those edges, which worked delightfully. Mixing up the purple clouds in this upper part a little bit. I'm adding more of them than what we have in our reference photo. Added a little bit of white here. A little bit of white and a little bit of water. A little bit more white. And now I'm going to overlap the purple I put on there before. And I'm going to overlay this on the edges of our purple where it meets the warm colors that are in the ocean. I'm feeling like that edge is a little too harsh. Okay. This one's actually starting to be pretty interesting. So we have our reference photo, right, which has lots of really lovely mauve in it, like red mauve. And changing up the sky a little bit because I did add more percentage of sky to water than in the reference, so I added a little bit more purple there. At some point, you can change your painting to where it makes more sense to just pay more attention to the painting and less to the photo to do what's right for your composition in particular. And we might be coming to that spot. I'm going to take some white paint and adjust our sunspot a bit, brighten it up, and also add a little bit more to this cloud. And then I'm going to add a little bit of magenta and red and warm up that horizon line. I don't want it to be that light though. It's a little bit light right now. So it's okay if I overlap onto the water and the sky. I'm going to kind of do two things at the same time. It will warm up the water on the horizon and then also bring the value down on that sky. I'm going to wipe that off on my paper towel and blend any hard lines I see. Now that same color, I'm gonna make some more water lines. Bring them closer to the middle. And it's okay if we overlap, because this paint is transparent. Also, there's a good amount of water in my brush right now, so I'm going to get a lot of glazing type transparency and color gradients from that. Now it is time to start getting darker in the foreground. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get to all 4 sunset paintings today, but I'm glad I did. Always on a time limit. Which adds to the challenge, right? Okay, now I got to darken that. My darkest dark that I can mix, a chromatic black that is going to be the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, but I'm going to add a little bit of the quinacridone magenta, just purple it up. Now this is super dark. I'm going to start from the bottom. I added more water to my brush to keep that transparency. And I'm going to try to make really long artistic brush strokes here. Now remember, when you're about a third of the way up from the bottom, you're going to need to bring these brush strokes into more of a medium scale. So as you get away from the viewer, going smaller and smaller, further and further away in the distance. And now I'm going to start adding more water to my paintbrush, and that's going to increase the transparency of that color of that paint. And now I am on the very small side of the brush. And with tiny, tiny brush strokes, I am going further up. More water, further up. More distance in between each brush strokes. I'm just incorporating that color and gradating up into the distance. And I'm going a little bit heavier on the outside away from the sun. All right, I'm gonna pick up a little bit of soft orange. Ooh, clean that brush out super good, or switch brushes, that would be okay too. I still have maybe 2 more water changes in my little water changer here. Rinse well. Because going from purple to yellow, it's like kind of dramatic. You don't want to muddy up your yellow too much. But I also don't want this to be super high contrast, so I have a nice melon color here. Add a little bit of water to that brush. I'm gonna wipe a little bit of that off on my paper towel, and then starting in the middle, I'm gonna just brush out from the middle, and I am looking to overlap any super hard lines. I don't need to cover up everything. And this isn't covering up anyway, this is pretty transparent. Dramatic. A little bit of water, a little bit of cadmium red medium, and now I'm just gonna rose up some spots in the middle third. Felt like that line was a little intense. I'm adjusting that spot with a little bit of yellow. Oh my god, I feel like that sunspot's kind of hard. Doesn't have the diffused look that I want it to have necessarily. Picking up a little bit of white to remedy that. And then I'm going to rinse that out, dry it off, blend any weird little funky hard lines. And then if they can't be blended, you can just go over it. All right. It's graphic, it's interesting. It's got a very like Miami Vice look to it. Fun, stylish. They don't all have to be convincing and realistic, do they? Nah. That was fun. Okay, let's review. So I trust you can correlate these with the reference photo. So that was number 4. It's going to be the left on that trio. Then this one is the little runoff creek reflection. And we've got that dusky mauvey purple with the reflection in the water, which I quite like. It's kind of, I don't know, matches the music tempo. And then the first one we started out with, which is kind of like at this tropical, intense, fiery sunset. So thank you so much for joining me on today's stream. I hope this was inspiring for you to see me kind of do some sketching in my notebook, and hopefully you picked up some sunset painting tips as well. So until the next painting demonstration or tutorial, I wish you happy painting.